Welcome everybody to day 4, the final day of ESB Networks Dingle Project webinar series. My name is Fergal Egan. I've been the project manager for the Dingle project since March 2020, and I'll be acting as MC throughout today's webinar. The series started earlier this week on Tuesday the 7th, and that webinar provided an overview of the Dingle project, discussed evolving customer values, and highlighted the many state supports that exist to help people, businesses and communities move towards low carbon. That webinar set the scene for the remainder of this week. On Wednesday, the focus was on the EV trial and the flexibility trial, and also included a discussion with one of the EV ambassadors who shared his own experiences of electric motoring. Yesterday, Thursday, was all about the active energy citizen, and we heard about the initiatives underway to engage and empower the community on low carbon transformation. We also heard about the research undertaken to assess the effectiveness of the ambassador programme and the EV trial, and we heard from 2 of the ambassadors who spoke openly about their own experiences. Today, we focus on 2 things. Firstly, network resilience, something that's in many people's minds this week as the country recovers from the impacts of Storm Barra. And secondly, we will look at the future with presentations on ESB Networks' National Network Local Connections Programme, and we'll also hear about other local initiatives happening and planned across the Dingle Peninsula. After today's Q&A, the Managing Director of ESB Networks, Nicholas Tarrant, will say a few words to close down the webinar series. So we encourage attendees today to ask questions, and we would request that you post these in the chat box. At the end of the presentations, we'll have a Q&A session, and we'll try to address as many as possible within that time frame. Each of the webinars this week will be recorded, and links to them will be posted on ESB Networks website in due course. So if you didn't get a chance to see all of the interesting presentations earlier this week, you'll be able to catch up at a later stage. So our first presentation today is all about network resilience. We have 2 speakers, Cheryl Carmody and Mary O'Mahony, who will talk about the work that was carried out across the network in Dingle over recent times, some of the new technologies that are being trialled to enhance its resilience, and plans over the coming years to roll out these or similar type technologies on other parts of the network. I'll introduce both speakers first and then hand over to Cheryl, who will deliver the early parts of this presentation. So Cheryl Carmody was the network assets lead for the Dingle project. As part of this responsibility, Cheryl worked closely with the engineers and network technicians team from the Tralee area to implement those required changes to traditional technologies and devices on the network, to install new low voltage monitoring devices across the peninsula, and to configure and commission a number of new technologies now under trial on those circuits. Cheryl is an electronic engineer with a master's in control engineering and has in recent months taken up a new role in the company as business support manager in our southern region. You're very welcome, Cheryl. So Cheryl will be joined by Mary O'Mahony. Mary has over 30 years experience in the utility business, working in both management and technical specialist capacities during her career with ESB Networks. Currently, Mary is the Continuity Improvement Manager, and as Continuity Allowance Owner is responsible for managing the €39 million PR5 capital allowance throughout the period 2021 to 2025, and for regulatory reporting on reliability and resilience incentives, customer minutes lost, customer interruptions, and worst served customers. So over to you first, Cheryl, and Mary, you can take up when Cheryl navigates to your first slide.
Thank you, Fergal, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join today. So for those of you who joined on day 1 of the webinar, you will have heard Fergal speak about the overall objectives of the programme, which are the project, which are called out here on the right of the screen. What I'm going to talk about for the next few minutes is some of the work carried out to enhance the reliability of the network in Dingle for all of our customers. And I want to apologise in advance for the non-polished finish of my presentation. Day 1 of the webinar also coincided with day 1 of Storm Barra, and things have been extremely busy since, restoring power to thousands of customers, both by local operations and also remote centralised control. So In my presentation today, I will speak a little bit about the work that we did to improve the operation of a number of different devices that were on the overhead network in Dingle that were previously installed. And I'll then provide an overview of some of the technologies that are being trialled and the value that we expect these to deliver for our customers. I will then hand over to my colleague Mary, who will give her thoughts on what's next in terms of technology rollout beyond the Dingle Peninsula, so as to enhance the resilience of the network and make it more reliable in the minds of our customers. You will see at the end of our presentation as well that innovation projects like Dingle can help inform the rollout of technology on a wider scale and ultimately help inform the design of the network to support a low carbon society. So for those of you who are not familiar with the geography of Ireland, Dingle Peninsula is shown here in blue on the overall map of the country, and it's an area that's exposed to the full force of the Atlantic Ocean, both winds and salt. So part of the reason that the Dingle was selected as the location for the project was because if the technology is deployed in Dingle, whether on customer rooftops or on the overhead network, if they can survive the harsh elements in Dingle, then they can probably survive elsewhere on the network across Ireland. So why does network reliability matter? And why is it becoming even more important? Well, first off, ESB Networks is proud of its role in providing the homes, farms and businesses across the country, and not just the peninsula, with an efficient and reliable distribution network. As a business, ESB Networks is incentivised by our regulator to reduce customer interruptions and customer minutes lost. So basically to minimise the occurrence of faults, and when they do occur, to repair them as quickly as possible and restore power to our customers. But we want to do that anyway as part of the service we provide. So you will have heard speakers in previous webinars this week speak about the electrification of heat and transport that is expected to happen over the next decade. And with more and more people across society dependent on the local electricity network to heat their homes with air source heat pumps and power their cars, this will bring the resilience of the network into even greater focus. So, and I'm sure people have experienced it this week, but nobody wants to wake up in a cold house to a car that won't start. So I'll go on now next to here we are. So we have installed apologies now, folks. So we have I want to explain here now about a little about the ESB network and its visibility and control. So some of the improvements that we made to the operation of technologies that were already on the peninsula, which pre-existed the project. So part of the project involved upgrading some of the reclosers and voltage regulators on the ESB network and connecting them back to SCADA, whereas previously they would have been locally controlled. So this then enhances visibility and establishes remote control to enable various operational tasks to be carried out faster and safer. So the thick green line shown here on the map is the 38 kV network. The two stars are the stations of Inch and Dingle, with Dingle being on the left. So the 38 kV network is fed from Tralee into Inch, and Dingle is then tail fed from Inch. So as I said there, sorry, no matter. And if for any reason that the feed from Tralee goes down, then the peninsula can also be fed from Killarney, from the Milltown direction. So as part of the project, we worked with our colleagues in the Tralee area to upgrade the recloser and voltage regulator networks on the overhead network and connect them back to the National Distribution Control Centre, the NDCC. So when this remote control really comes into its own as well is that situations where maintenance needs to be carried out and the Dingle 38 kV station needs to be offloaded, and the supply on the peninsula needs to be backfed through the 20 kV network, which is shown here in red, and the 10 kV network is shown in blue. So I suppose these upgrades have significantly reduced the time. I'm sorry, these are the voltage regulators then, and there's 6 of those on the peninsula. So these upgrades have significantly reduced the time that it takes for these backfeeding and restoration operations. They have eliminated many hundreds of kilometres of driving and that had to be undertaken by network technicians. And together with these associated vehicle emissions, they have also freed up a number of other technicians which can focus on other activities, all the while enhancing our service to our customers. So 5 out of the 6 voltage regulators, which you can see here in the blue square in the white circle, 5 of those are now remotely controllable from the NDCC. The final regulator upgrade will happen during 2022 in parallel with the work to convert the remainder of the 10 kV network to 20 kV. So as well as upgrading the existing MV devices, we also wanted to trial a number of new technologies to determine whether they might enhance the overall reliability of our network there. Some of these, we installed a number of smart fault passage indicators, or FPIs, on 2 circuits. Shown here in blue and orange. So the blue ones are the smart FPI and the 2 orange ones are also smart FPI, but they're solar powered. The other blue ones are powered by line current. So when a fault occurs anyway and fault passes through the indicators, it keeps a record of this. And the Dingle project is investigating whether an analysis of this data and the fault passage data can help better identify where faults have occurred and enable reductions in time required to resolve these faults. So we have rolled out a number of different devices or different manufacturer devices, both Horseman and Bowden's, and we're trying to see which type of devices are better suited to different parts of the network. We'll say if there is sufficient line current on the circuits to power the Horseman devices, or are the battery operated Bowden devices a better alternative in some locations. And also a question that we're hoping to answer is if the solar powered FPIs stand up to the environmental conditions that they'll be exposed to locally. In addition to this, we are analysing the data to see whether the devices actually deliver on their promise. Do they accurately narrow down the location of faults? Can the data be analysed in close to real time so as to improve efforts to restore power faster by providing fault repairing entities with the best information? So I suppose like FPIs or fault passage indicators, they aren't a new thing. We have previously deployed in ESB Networks passive fault passage indicators in 5 sites across the country between 2012 and 2015. So like these passive fault passage indicators, when a fault passes through them, a light will come on, but that still means that the ESB Networks technician has to be dispatched to drive to site to see if the flashing light can be seen, whereas the smart FPIs give a remote and instantaneous reading of fault passage to both the National Distribution Control Centre and to the field operator on his mobile device. So this will inevitably speed up fault location and therefore restoration of supply to our customers, thus minimising the impacts of faults when they do occur. Like traditionally, crews would have been patrolling long sections of lines in order to find the fault. Just in relation to the smart fault passage indicators, I want to take this opportunity to give huge thanks to Aidan Heffernan and Kieran Geeney for their contributions to this particular piece of work. And thanks to all the area and construction staff in Tralee, the supervisors Ian and Eamon, the area manager, and also to all the ENTs, but in particular Dermot Carroll, who is a network technician and experienced operator who had the misfortune to be living on the Dingle Peninsula. Just joking, Dermot is a very proactive network technician, and he was very involved and helped progress all aspects of the network assets workstream of the Dingle project. So the smart FPI technologies then, if I just move on here, they have huge potential to improve the safety of our network technicians. This photo here shows a network technician patrolling a line on the peninsula, something that is required to find the location of the fault. So this, imagine if this was nighttime and in bad weather, and if the technician was required to walk a few kilometers to find the location of the fault and make the necessary repairs. So by combining the data that I spoke about to the control center with the data from the reclosers or fault passage indicators, the on-call NT can then visualize on a mobile device the FPIs where the fault may have passed through and pinpoint the fault much quicker to a smaller section of line. This, of course, saves valuable time and is a safer alternative than patrolling the line in sometimes very difficult terrain. And this in turn reduces the customer minutes lost. And I'd imagine after the week that we've had, our network technicians will have much better photo ops and have, you know, absolutely plenty more about the safety implications of patrolling long sections of line. Now, 3 slides back, when we were looking at the map of the peninsula, I showed locations of the 3-phase recloser devices on the network and how they are all now connected back to SCADA, providing additional visibility and control. So trials of recloser devices on the single-phase network have previously taken place elsewhere in the country. So these trials, which, apologies, I mentioned they're FPIs, but they're actually these fuse savers. These trials occurred previously between 2012 and 2015 at 5 different sites. And what the single phase reclosing devices told us in those cases were that 92% of the faults were transient in nature. And these were caused by things such as bird strikes, clashing wires, lightning, or branches tipping against the line. So these reclosers then, they switch off the power for a few seconds, allowing the fault to be cleared and then reclose, thus restoring the power almost instantly. So the reclosers can then check whether the fault has been resolved and essentially maintain the power for downstream customers and provide significant savings to ESB Networks in terms of reduced penalties associated with the customer interruptions and the customer minutes lost that I referred to earlier. It also saves on maintenance callouts and on the replacement of spur fuses. So previously, a transient fault on one of these spurs could have led to a lengthy outage for the downstream customers. Trials of single-phase reclosers, or the fuse saver device as we installed here, they to date have been passive with no visibility on the SCADA or remote control enabled. So to view then, if you wanted to see the device's history, you needed to visit the site and download the data on a local laptop. And when a permanent fault occurred, the devices entered lockout and you had to go to site and use either a laptop or an operating rods to revert the devices back to normal. And as part of the Dingle project, we have successfully integrated the single-phase reclosers with our back-end SCADA system, enabling the data to be analysed and providing information for remote control. You'll see here where we have installed the device in field on Dingle. Thanks again to Aidan Heffernan for his work here and expertise on getting the devices connected, getting the devices talking to SCADA. In addition to the device on the low volt and the medium network, we also have installed monitoring devices on the low voltage network. Like the devices that are going to be installed, we've installed these on pole mounted subs and ground mounted subs on the network to give us greater visibility of our LV network. For this is where the EV chargers and the heat pumps and the customer devices, DER, will primarily be installed. So we've got 30 of these devices installed across the peninsula, and again, we're trialing a number of different manufacturers. I'll just come on now. I'm conscious of time now, so just one kind of important point to note on this particular slide is that one of the sites where we have installed a low voltage monitor is in Feather in a small housing estate where every house has an air source heat pump. So when reviewing the data, we noticed that there was in the early hours of Sunday morning, there was a large spike for approximately 1 hour. And this actually, it transpires that this actually corresponds to the Legionnaire's cleaning cycle, which takes place on each air source heat pump. And that it appears that the 20 properties have this timed via factory settings to occur at the same time. So we can see then that a simple adjustment here can drastically reduce the peak load on the network at that particular time. I'd like to hand over now to Mary, who's going to speak a little bit about the wider rollout on other parts of the network, of some of the new types of technology that are being trialled in Dingle and for PR5 and beyond. Over to you now, Mary. Sorry for eating into your time there slightly.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary O'Mahony, and I'm the Continuity Manager in ESB Networks. As storm bar repairs are just finishing as I speak, where over 40 faults occurred on the Dingle Peninsula, we've not yet had a chance to review the performance of our sensors over the past few days. They've been really active, and indeed very active again this morning. In this presentation, I will explain how the smart technologies trialled in Dingle work together in a non-violent storm situation to achieve an improved customer experience by automatically reducing the impact of faults when they inevitably occur on our exposed overhead networks. Next slide, please. Here, I'm describing what happens for a single fault scenario. Rather than 1,500 customers out, the prolonged fault outage impact is reduced to 200 customers. This schematic shows a typical deployment. 2 outlets interconnected, each with 1,500 customers and 30 kilometres of backbone line. The normally open point between the 2 outlets is at Recloser R3. The Reclosers with the square symbol R are typically placed at 500 customer sections, as per the PR5 continuity programme approved by CRU. The reclosers in this example have self-healing functionality programmed. The smart fault passage sensors, shown with the symbol F on the diagram, are positioned midway between the reclosers to give maximum remote diagnostic visibility of the fault network. In this case, the self-healing networks get 2/3 of the customers back within 1 minute of a fault occurring. That's 1,000 customers back. The smart sensors then come into play by giving our Dublin Control Centre further locational diagnostic information. The schematic shows an example of how the technology works together when a single fault occurs at the indicated position. Recloser R1 trips open, then R3 at the normally open point closes automatically, then R2 trips open automatically. 500 customers in the automatically isolated faulted section between R1 and R2 have a power outage. The other 1,000 customers, in effect, have self-healing networks. In our Dublin control room, the control room operators look at the fault sensor information. The NT, as Cheryl has said, the NT also has access to this information via an app on his phone. The control room informs the dispatched field NT that the fault is between Recloser R1 and R2, that the sensor at F2 indicates the fault is between the line section CD. So the control room directs the NT to manually restore supply to a further 300 customers between A and B by driving directly to the links at point B to open the links. And when the NT has these links open, then the control room operator in Dublin will remotely close R1, thus restoring supply to 300 customers between section A and B. And that typically will take place within an hour. So then the NTs goes patrolling and fault hunting on the 5-kilometre section between C and D. And the NT is armed with this information before he leaves the depot, and that helps him get supply back to as many customers as possible. So in terms of impact, well, first of all, without this technology, 1,500 customers would be without supply for at least 2 hours. And the NT would have no diagnostics available to him. The NT would have to manually sectionize the network in the way the reclosers automatically operated within 1 minute, as I've just previously described. So in effect, the NT would have to patrol 30 kilometres of network in the blind to find the fault. So from a customer service point of view, the prolonged outage impact is reduced to just 200 customers with this smart technology. Next slide, Cheryl, please. So the Dingle Innovation Project has provided us with valuable learning for PR5 and beyond. We've documented trial reports for the smart technologies tested in Dingle. This is really going to help with the implementation of ESB's PR5 programme and beyond. We've developed field experience to write a procurement spec for the PR5 programme for the new technologies. We've got an understanding how to specify what we want for the maximum benefit of the customers in Dingle. We've trialled installation procedures. We've established practical deployment constraints. We've developed operations procedures, and we're getting a very good understanding of the robustness and suitability of various devices, as Cheryl described. And in future, these devices will be integrated into our new ADMS system, as Ellen will be talking about next. And before I hand back to Fergal, I would really like to thank the Dingle Project, in particular Cheryl and Aidan Heffernan and Kieran Gainey for the trailblazing work they've done to help progress automation to improve our customer experience. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Cheryl and Mary, for sharing so much information on the work that you've led over the recent years to upgrade existing technologies and to trial new devices on the network across the peninsula. It's good to understand that these new technologies can work in combination with more traditional devices to help minimise the duration of outages for our customers affected by faults on the network. And it's also great to hear that the Dingle project has provided learnings which can be applied elsewhere into the future. So many, many thanks. So we now move on to the first of our two presentations which look into the future. Our next speaker is Ellen Diskin. So Ellen is responsible for leading ESB Networks' National Network Local Connections Programme to deliver the operational systems, market design and organisational capabilities critically needed to achieve renewables penetrations of 80% and above on the Irish electricity system. So this project will introduce new products and services to increase system security, renewables penetration, community and market participation in Ireland. So previously, as PR5 manager, Ellen was responsible for leading the development of ESB Networks' investment plan for 2021 to 2025, which was approved by the regulator. Ellen has over 10 years' experience in the energy industry, working in operations, research and development, regulation and investment planning. Now, prior to this, Ellen also worked in the telecommunications sector. So over to you now, Ellen, to tell us more about the National Network's Local Connections programme and everything associated with that.
Right, thank you very much for the intro there, Fergal. And sorry, folks, thank you very much for your time this afternoon and for bringing me in this discussion about building a more resilient network for the future. Okay, where to start? So, my eldest child has obsessive compulsive disorder, a lifelong condition which frames almost every interaction she has with the world around her. Some days are good, some days are bad, some days aren't worth mentioning. Now, her therapist has explained to me that this is about her little mind feeling insecure and trying to control everything in the environment around her as a result. And our goal, so the holy grail that we are working towards every single day, is that my child could build resilience, that she could allow the world around her be a little bit unpredictable, and rather than trying to control it, allow herself to adapt and become flexible as the world changes around her. So when I say resilience, what I mean is the ability to be flexible, the ability to take control of yourself and not need to control the world around you. And I can't think of any better description for why we need to become flexible in how we use and store energy in Ireland. We need people to take control of their own energy as we gradually move as a society towards wind and solar energy increasingly, which is, it's less predictable and it's less controllable, but it is so much more sustainable. And that's why ESB Networks established the National Network Local Connections programme. The programme is about supporting our customers in their homes and businesses to take control. To do that, we need to rapidly adapt our network to bring together those changes in what are happening all around us, so in how we're generating electricity and how we're using it, so that our customers can play an active role in meeting our climate action targets. What does that actually mean? So what I want us to do today is walk through what that means, how things are changing around us from the home today to the home at the end of this decade, and how customers can take control and what we're doing to make those changes happen. It is really, really easy to imagine that emissions come from someone big and far away. And it's true that until the Climate Action Plan, renewable energy in Ireland was really about big utilities connecting wind farms. The Climate Action Plan, though, it really changed all of that. So back 2 years or more now, in July 2019, the Climate Action Plan stood up and said, this isn't about a small number of big organisations anymore. This is about making renewable energy work for a huge number of small individual households and businesses in communities right across Ireland. So what's going on in those homes today? Well, in Ireland, on average, most of us run our daily lives on roughly 75% fossil fuels. So with petrol or diesel cars and gas or oil heating, and all of that adds up. So across our country, 40% of Ireland's total emissions come from our cars and our heating. Now, you'll see there in the home today, and that's pretty representative, the last 25% of our energy, so that we use to run our daily lives, that comes from electricity. That's the light, probably the oven, the washing machine, the dishwasher, the laptop and the phone charger. So that's what's the last 25% of our energy. And that last 25% is delivered by a network that today it's supplying electricity that's 60% fossil fuel and 40% wind and solar. And that 40% is absolutely world leading, by the way. So sometimes it's hard to remember that, well, it's hard to remember that we're good at this when there's always a higher target, and there is, but it's worth remembering. We are actually really good at renewable electricity in Ireland. 30 years ago, that was almost 0% wind and solar. Change happens when we work together to make sure that it does. So there was a period over the last decade when every 3 years, we doubled the amount of wind farms connected across the network. But the thing is, that 40% is just an average. There are days when our electricity is almost fully from fossil fuels. There are other days when 75%, that's 3/4, is coming solely from wind generation. But you and me in our homes, we don't have sight of that really at all. So that 25% of our energy that comes from electricity, we're just taking that average mix of 40% renewable because we don't have the information and we don't really have the control to try and use it, say, on those days when it's actually almost fully green. Which means, yeah, today in our homes, we are really, really dependent on fossil fuels. So here's the question. Would you like to be less dependent on fossil fuels? Well, most of us would. And there's quite a body of research now, and it's very clear. We all want to leave something better behind. Okay, then if the answer is yes, and less dependent on fossil fuels means more dependent on electricity, like Cheryl said there, well, would you like that electricity to be renewable? Yep, sure. What was the point of going electric if not to go green? And then the last question for you. Say you're living on the side of the street that doesn't have solar panels. Would you still want to buy local and go green? Would you like to know when your electricity is local and when your electricity is green? Well, I would. So like the way I can go to Google Maps and see when's the best time to pop down to the shops or when my local cafe is a bit quieter, I'd like to know when I can run the washing machine or when I can charge the car and know that I'm running on something that's sustainable. And you know what? I am not alone in that. We've commissioned a whole body of research this year and asked normal people right across Irish society, and their answer is yes. Now, most people haven't thought about this yet, but as soon as they do think about it, the answer is usually fairly simple. Yep, we all want to leave something better behind, and we all want to take control. But how? Well, firstly, over the next 10 years, we're going to be quite naturally moving to electricity. So a warm and comfortable and safe, energy efficient home isn't just for the people who can afford it or the people who like new technologies anymore. It's for everyone. The building regulations in Ireland and across Europe now mean that every single new home built in Ireland today has to either have a solar panel or renewable electric heating. From 2022, it will no longer be possible to install an oil boiler in a new home, and from 2025, it will no longer be possible to install gas heating in new homes. And it's not just the new homes or the bigger homes outside the cities. The local authorities have been real leaders in getting out and upgrading social housing. Carbon tax is now being channeled into tens of thousands of home energy retrofits every year, including fully funded retrofits for the fuel poor. There are new centres of excellence in near zero energy buildings being set up nationally and regionally to train tradespeople to do the work. So, and I suppose that's the thing, if none of that was enough, look out the window. Up and down the street, I bet you can spot at least one solar panel, maybe an electric vehicle too. I popped round and they've taken me for a spin in the car and I want to follow. Within a few short years, it will be normal for your home or mine to be running fully on electricity, heating the home, powering the car, running the washes to get the kids out and clean clothes, but that's not all that's changing. Within a few years, 80% of our electricity in Ireland will come from the wind and solar generation. So we'll be running securely and sustainably on the wind and the sun. Now there'll still be a backup, so roughly 20% of our average electricity will come from gas and foreign imports to support us on the days when it's needed. But most of what the wires supporting or supplying our homes will be providing is renewable. And it won't just be renewable, it'll be local. Because renewable electricity is something that we can own ourselves. We can put up solar panels on our roof. A community can join forces and invest in their own local solar farm. Even the developer-owned renewables are increasingly focused on how the local community can gain from a new wind farm. And this session is about resilience. Having Indigenous local supplies of electricity, and that is a real step towards a resilient network. That means that our home that's running fully on electricity in the future will be running on electricity that's on average 80% green. So good start, but not the whole story. I spoke at the start about resilience and about how being flexible is a big part of being resilient, and how resilience is about taking control of yourself and not needing to control the world around you. Well, renewable electricity, it's not controllable. The sun will shine when it shines and the wind will blow when it blows. There are going to be long periods of the day, though, when we're running on 100% renewable electricity, and there'll be other times when it's calm or it's dull, and our power will have to come from gas and imports. So if we want to get the most out of those changes in our electricity system, we need to get smarter about how we use what we have. So yeah, the electricity itself may not be controllable, but who is in control of how and when our home is powered? Well, we are, or at least we can be. So imagine you had an app in your home that was showing you, or on your phone, which was showing you what's happening on your local energy network. And imagine that app could show you when it's the best time to take control of your energy usage. So choose to use or store renewable energy because it's available locally. Imagine that app could talk to your car charger, talk to your heating, that you could use it to press go on the washing machine. That's not that far away. And that's what the National Network Local Connections Programme is about. So today, the only place you can really see what's happening out there when the sun's shining or the wind's blowing or electricity usage is really high or low, it's back in ESB Networks control room. What we're doing in National Network Local Connections is trying to make that local energy information available to our customers so they're in a position to choose. We want to push that same information into our customers' fingertips and work with energy suppliers and technology companies to introduce financial incentives for people to choose to use that information. This is all about people having the right information, the right supports, and the right technology. Being able to see that, okay, right now on my local network, there's a lot of energy being consumed and there's not much wind or sun, and deciding, no, I don't actually particularly need to charge the car right now. But being able to see that later in the day, the sun will be shining in Navan, say, and electricity will be cheap and renewable, and that's when I want to start my smart charger charging. So yeah, today, customers don't have sight of their local energy system, and they don't really have the ability to take control. But this programme is about following what's been done in Dingle and changing that. We want to give people the ability and the choice to use electricity that's renewable and local. To do that, in ESB Networks, we're rapidly adapting our network. We're installing sensors, like Cheryl showed there a few moments ago, and forecasting and real-time analytics so that we have the information to use ourselves and to share with our customers. We're also introducing new services where we'll pay customers to choose to take control and begin managing their electricity. We cannot do this alone, and we have absolutely no intention of trying. So our role in ESB Networks and in the National Network Local Connections Programme is to build the systems, make sure the right information is out there and the right incentives, so lead and bring this together. But we will be absolutely reliant on partnership and creativity and innovation from electricity suppliers and energy and technology companies and a range of different organizations working directly with customers to make this work. Empowering customers means that collectively we are responsible for making sure that everything from the deals an electricity supplier offers to the supports in the community to the tradespeople installing smarter car chargers, smart heating systems and smart solar panels, smart washing machines, that they are ready. Now, in Dingle, the community working with ESB Networks with a range of partners from the public and private sectors, commercial and academic, have really set the direction. And I'm looking forward to what Deirdre's going to bring us through later. But now's the time for the rest of us across ESB Networks and across the country to go on that same journey. The National Network Local Connections Programme was established almost a year ago to pick up the baton and drive this out. We're really committed. It is a multi-year, multi-million euro investment initiative. Now, this year has been all about high-level design, rollout planning and consultation. So as we arrive at the end of the year, we have a really solid plan to deliver. And that's been built with the input and the support of our stakeholders. With the SEAI, we undertook a huge body of network modelling and scenario analysis, looking out over the next decade at the proliferation of electric vehicles and heating and microgeneration, so you get a clear picture of where and when we need to target for rolling out new services. The local visibility plan we developed this year is ready for us to get out and map and install new sensors like the ones Cheryl was showing you there earlier on tens of thousands of local networks across the country, building on those trials of those sensors in Dingle over the past 2 years. It's really important that other companies in the electricity industry who work directly with customers have a chance to prepare. So we've developed a market rollout plan that sets out how we plan to pay customers who are willing to change their behaviour. And in many instances, it'll be through their electricity supplier or new management companies who specialise in home energy management systems that they will be paid. Customers need to plan too. So we're working with the NSEI and the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland on standards for smart chargers and smart inverters. So it's much, much easier in future for customers to choose the smarter technology from the outset because it's the default that their installer provides. We've been down to Dingle to learn from the guys there. We've engaged with other utilities right across the world who are also trying to do this. And with a lot done, now we're ready to plan to get on into delivery. So at the end of September, they're gone. Minister Eamon Ryan formally launched the programme. And then over the past 2 months, we held a public consultation on our rollout and piloting plans. And we were staggered by the depth and the breadth of engagement that we got, actually. Over 300 people from major energy companies to SMEs to householders contributed, and we have been absolutely privileged to share in their ideas. and now we're looking to apply them going forward. So over the next 2 to 3 years there, we'll be piloting on the ground in a whole range of locations across the country. We have 8 locations under consideration for next year, where we'll run pilots that are most likely to involve commercial customers rather than domestic, though we could well be surprised by who turns up. Now, after that, we have pilots preparing to go live every 6 months or so thereafter. So the piloting roadmap is pretty broad. There are some pilots focusing on how a new or a community wind or solar farm could connect more quickly or cheaply with a flexible connection. In 2023 and 2024, we want to increase the footprint of piloting and introduce pilots that are focusing on the behavioural and customer side of this, rather than just, say, the control systems. And then from the end of 2024, pending what we deliver through piloting, we're planning to begin a national rollout, with these new services enabling customers to take control, becoming available at locations across the country by the end of 2025. So look, thank you very, very much for your time. I'm really looking forward to the panel discussion a little later and being led by what you want to discuss on the programme. Thank you for your time.
Great. Well, thanks, Ellen, for a very, very interesting presentation there. And it's very, very good to understand a little bit more about your plans for flexibility pilots into the future and on the whole role that citizens and communities can play in the future energy system. So very, very interesting stuff altogether. If I could just encourage people to start popping questions into the chat function there, so we can have a good discussion after the final presentation. So I'm delighted now to introduce Deirdre Devilish of the Dingle Innovation and Creativity Hub. ESB Networks has been collaborating with the Dingle Hub for the last few years, and this collaboration was one of the foundations which helped the Dingle project to flourish from an early stage. Deirdre is General Manager of the Dingle Peninsula Hub. Her key focus is to build a sustainable community through fostering an ecosystem that supports the creation of enterprise and employment on the Dingle Peninsula. She's an experienced social enterprise and community leader with a comprehensive knowledge of strategic and operational development. Skilled in multi-stakeholder and community engagement, she drives multiple projects which address the community's transition to low-carbon society. Deirdre holds a degree in electronic engineering from NUIG and a master's in engineering science from UCC. So over to you now, Deirdre.
Thanks very much, Fergal. It's very exciting to see the plans for the National Network Local Connections Programme and the learnings from Dingle being implemented nationwide. As Fergal says, I'm the manager of the Dingle Peninsula Hub, and since early 2018, we have worked closely with ESB Networks and 2 other partner organisations, Northeast West Kerry Development and MARI, the SFI Centre for Energy, Climate and Marine, to support and enable the broader societal changes required for low carbon transition. Within this, the Dingle Peninsula Hub is also working to identify employment opportunities and to help create the conditions for a sustainable economic future for the area. So our mission is to build a creative, livable, sustainable and inclusive community, fostering a vibrant and diverse ecosystem of stakeholders, to facilitate the creation and maintenance of well-paid year-round incomes on the Dingle Peninsula. We deliver this mission through work on 4 strategic platforms, as recognising the opportunities that connectivity would bring. The first platform is to provide shared workspace with fast, reliable broadband. But we understood very quickly that this on its own would not be sufficient to bring about the diverse employment that was needed. And so we set about developing relationships, building collaborations and initiating projects under 3 thematic pillars. That's sustainability and adaptation, the digital transformation, and the creative industries. What is emerging is that we are becoming a living lab, a place where we have built the ecosystem to enable test and trial projects, and a place where innovation can flourish. We have found that unlocking opportunities through the transition to a low carbon society is a logical strategy to help realise our mission. And I'll give an overview of some of the many initiatives underway as I go through the presentation. An excellent example of strategic pillar 3 in action is local domestic electrical contractor Omarku Electrical, who had an opportunity to tender for battery installation on the StoreNet project. That was a project involving the IERC, the International Energy Research Centre, Electric Ireland and ESB Networks that installed battery management solutions in 20 homes in Ballyferriter to explore their impact on an area of the grid that comes under significant pressure at different times of the year for different reasons. Omuraku Electrical won the tender, and because of their involvement and the on-the-job training they received through this, they saw the opportunity to pivot their business to form Solar Bio, which is a solar PV battery management and EV charger installation company. They now have a much expanded customer base into the rest of Kerry and Cork and Limerick, and they're increasing their staff numbers and moving to larger premises. They're reporting continual growth in installations and attribute much of this through word of mouth initiated by trial participants on the ESB Networks Dingle project. The Dingle Peninsula has seen significant acceleration in the growth of remote working because of the pandemic, and Strategic Platform 4 focuses on ensuring that those home workers and learners who may not need regular workspace, but they still need to feel connected professionally and socially to networks of colleagues. A client who recently moved to the peninsula told us how he now feels that he has found the last piece of the jigsaw in knowing that the hub and the hub community is available to him. So an important component of our work is knowledge sharing, and we do this in many different ways. I'll spend a little time going through this in more detail now. So we're very active across multiple networks and platforms to enable participation in policy debate and piloting. And this project is a prime example of that. But this can involve, at a local level, participating in Kerry Tourism Industry Federation Sustainability Working Group and sharing the knowledge that we've learned through the various pilots, to being a member of the ESB Networks Customer and Society Panel, and to international level membership of the European Network of Living Labs. We've been recognised for our work through a number of awards, including the overall national winner of the IE Digital Town Awards in June this year. I mentioned earlier that we've been collaborating with MARI on the Dingle Peninsula 2030 initiative, but they've been involved as an embedded, engaged research partner since its inception. And this has led to an expanding library of publications, including learning briefs and journal papers. You'll see a number of them here. They're all available on the Dingle Peninsula 2030 website, and there are many more in the pipeline. So, engaging local schools on projects and data sets and learnings has been an important part of our work to date. And this has been supported by MARI through the delivery of climate hacks and also by ESB Networks through sponsorship of animation workshops. In both of these examples, data from the Dingle Peninsula Energy Master Plan formed the basis for the content here. And then the development of problem solving and animation skills was layered on top of this. I like to call this education by stealth. So the hub plays an important convening role to connect people and ideas locally, nationally and internationally. And some really nice examples of this are the recent Dingle Adapts Energy series. This was a series of virtual open days with the ESB Networks ambassadors to showcase the technologies in their homes. This was a necessity of the pandemic when we couldn't host in-person events, but they had high viewership numbers, and they remain with us as a digital resource to continually share the stories with those interested in starting their low carbon transition journey. Our recent journey to COP26 explored the challenges of undertaking an extended international journey in one of the ESB Networks trial vehicles. So our adventure is well documented online for anyone left who may not have heard about it. It's clear that there's still a way to go for the infrastructure to be fully ready for extended journeys. But I think it's fair to say that trial participants would all agree that for the majority of our day-to-day driving needs, we are certainly preferable to a petrol or diesel vehicle. On that journey to COP26, we took the opportunity to collect with like-minded communities in Ireland and Scotland on the way and learned much from them that we can embed within our own initiatives here. And we also had an opportunity to meet with Taoiseach Micheál Martin to share some of our plans for transition. Kirkagreena, or the Dingle Peninsula, has been designated as the decarbonisation zone for Kerry, and we're working very closely with Kerry County Council to develop an implementation plan for this and to identify funding sources to enable implementation. Our learnings from this will also have applicability outside the peninsula, and we will diffuse the lessons learned through the Gaeltacht Glas working group with Údarás na Gaeltachta. So one of the first projects that we undertook here was the Energy Master Plan for the peninsula, which identified reduction targets to 2030. We learned from this work that transport is 54% of our energy use and agriculture accounts for 49% of our emissions. This gave us clear direction to explore solutions in these areas. So to give you a snapshot of some of the established projects, the ESB Networks project was a really important catalyst to engage people in the early days, as it offered tangible ways to get involved through trial participation. Science Foundation Ireland have also supported our engagement work, which is empowering people to take action. And Kerry Education Training Board enabled the delivery of a community energy mentor training course, which brought together key people who are now driving their own changes on the peninsula. We are currently working on an EU Life proposal to enable the development of local one-stop shop services here. And this slide gives an overview of Science Foundation Ireland supported activity. A key part of this is the part funding of a community engagement coordinator who works closely with the community on energy initiatives. Through this support, we have run pilot energy clinics, as we had repeatedly seen over the course of our engagement work that people were unsure where to start when undertaking energy efficiency measures in their homes. There's lots of information available online, but people are unclear how to access it or determine which information is appropriate for their circumstances. So we saw a need for a signposting step at the start of the process where homeowners could seek independent, impartial advice on what would be required for their home at a high level, and then given the confidence and access to information required to undertake the necessary technical assessment. So enabled by the SFI funding, we delivered home energy clinics to 20 homeowners this summer. The initial feedback has been positive to suggest that the intervention will enable them to progress, and we're now tracking those homeowners to determine the actions that are being taken. So what is currently emerging from this pilot is that even when homeowners are primed and ready to take action, the challenges of accessing suitably qualified tradespeople are preventing many from making progress. So when you consider that we need to retrofit nearly 1,500 homes on the peninsula by 2030 here to align with the objectives of the Climate Action Plan, and we are currently at a rate of less than 20 per annum, then the scale of the challenge becomes very real. It's even more worrying when we see that the deep retrofitting number is 0 for the past 10 years. And that's what has led to our exploration of the EU Life mechanism to support the development of one-stop shop services here. So what we need to do is recreate the environment that led to the establishment of Solar Bio across all of the trades here. So we're currently working on plans for a sustainable travel pilot. That's a project to provide viable, sustainable alternatives to private car journeys in rural Ireland. We believe an integrated approach is necessary for this to succeed, and so we've held initial discussions with all of the relevant stakeholders to identify their roles in this pilot. Our role is to bring the community voice that will enable co-creation of solutions that will really work at a local level. Can we enable car sharing services on the peninsula? Can they be electrified? Can we identify the most suitable routes for walking, cycling infrastructure investment? Can we discuss affordability of public transport for commuters on the Tralee-Dingle route? This pilot has a really simple aim of enabling a return to single car ownership for each household. And some of the work is already underway. So the introduction of the Transport for Ireland local link Kerry bus services in late 2020, offering increased frequency 7 days per week, has proved very popular locally, and initial numbers are showing significantly increased uptake from the previous 2 day per week service. The service is designed to connect with the bus air and services from Tralee to Dingle, and we are hearing anecdotal stories of tourists now able to travel from Dublin to Dunqueen and back in 1 day on public transport. This would have been unheard of previously. The service is already showing positive impacts beyond simply reducing car journeys as well. It is a very valuable service to enhance community wellbeing and reduce isolation in rural areas. We hear the example of an elderly gentleman who had 2 years left driving. He was going to sell his house and move to Dingle town, but the local link bus service now passing his door has changed all of that. Community Energy Mentor Course participant and ESB Networks trial participant Dinny Galvin saw the opportunity to develop a sectorally based SEC and establish the West Kerry Dairy Farmer Sustainable Energy Community. This is a community of over 100 dairy farmers on the peninsula who are currently undertaking an energy master plan to understand the measures that will be required to both reduce their energy consumption and generate renewable energy. They're working with startup company DC6 Technologies to develop the energy master plan, and 9 of the farmers have the energy monitoring system Watrix installed on their farms, which gives them real-time access to their energy use across all devices. And this is already showing energy savings. A simple example of this was an alarm raised when a leak in a water pipe caused increase in pump operation. The alarm meant this was captured within hours, not days. A sectoral SEC has the advantages of common language and common measures. So, for example, when this group were informed that scrapers are high energy users, then a change in the frequency of their use is clearly understood, and immediate energy savings on a large scale are achievable. We're seeing through this work that tractor diesel accounts for 52% of the energy use on farms, and this is estimated to cost almost 1 million annually. This is one potential market for biogas on the peninsula, which brings me on to the many opportunities for anaerobic digestion to address transition here. So anaerobic digestion breaks down biodegradable material, which is slurry, grass, or food waste in the absence of oxygen, producing biogas. And so there are many reasons why it is suitable for the Dingle Peninsula and indeed many rural areas. To highlight a few, it can support immediate reductions in emissions through the use of slurry as a feedstock, thereby removing the need to store it. It can take offal from meat processors, which would be a key enabler to unlock the significant local tourist market for farm to fork produce. It can provide long-term contracts for the production of grass silage, thereby supporting long-term viability of the farms here. Given that we are over 70 kilometres for the nearest grid injection point, the proposed development path for AD on the peninsula is to produce biogas for use in local transport markets. This can include fuel for tractors and farm machinery, which we're learning is a significant energy user in the agricultural sector, and there are also opportunities among truck, bus and boat fleets. As biomethane use in transport vehicles provides the highest carbon emissions reduction of all renewable fuels, we see this as the solution with the most potential to address our needs on the peninsula. And we're currently working to bring this to development stage to build a small-scale demonstrator plant while establishing the local transport market in parallel. I won't go through this slide in any detail, but it's just there to say that the projects I've showcased today are just a few of many that are at various stages of development, and we have much more underway, from embedding artists with our farming community to explore challenges around climate change and opportunities for diversification, to developing schemes that support local diversity and regenerative agriculture. Throughout this webinar series, you'll have seen and heard all about all that this project has achieved on the peninsula, and we're seeing very real community impacts of this work, in that we have an informed, engaged community that has emerged that is open to participation in innovation projects to support transition. We're seeing important diffusions of all of this in the examples of the dairy farmer SEC, the sustainable travel project pilot, and the new energy service companies emerging. Our job now is to leverage all of this work to amplify its impact. We see the pathway to this through a variety of multi-partner collaboration projects in the area of transport, in further exploration of technologies that will enable flexibility, aggregation, optimization. The sandbox is here. It has been developed through all the hard work of ESB Networks over the past number of years. And we see the potential for continued behavioural research, as we really feel that the real impacts are only going to emerge over time. We've already had some preliminary discussions to explore alignment with EPRI, with the Electric Power and Research Institute, looking at their next generation research, speaking with ESB, external collaboration. Is there opportunities under the challenge projects there? And certainly discussions, we're very aligned with the transport strand of the Nexus project, and we're certainly looking to bring a car sharing solution to the peninsula as part of the Sustainable Travel project. So I'd like to thank ESB Networks for, being part of the start of this journey with us, and we look forward to, as I said, amplifying the impacts of the project into the future and continuing on the great work that has been done. We believe we're primed and ready to undertake the work that is required for rural community transition, and the ESB Networks project has been instrumental to bring us to this point. So, Gurv Mila Mahagat.
Thank you, Deirdre. And it's great to hear about other initiatives which have already started across the peninsula. And of course, some of those, if they were enabled by the ESB Networks Dingle project trials, all the better. And I suppose the community across the peninsula is in great hands at the moment. You really have everything under control, Deirdre, and there'll be definitely no shortage of low carbon projects over the coming years. So we're looking forward to keeping tabs on what's happening in Dingle over time. So I'd now like to invite Cheryl, Mary, Ellen and Deirdre to join me for today's Q&A session. So welcome back, everybody. And just to remind anybody that's still out there, to put some questions into the chat function, and we'll try to get through as many of them as possible over the next 15 to 20 minutes or so. So just looking at some of the questions coming through, and I don't know whether Cheryl is still on the call or whether she's had to attend to more pressing matters. But Mary, there's a few of them coming through that, sorry?
I'm still here.
You're still there, I don't see your picture on the screen.
I seem to have problems with my visual. I can't see anything.
Okay, but you're there anyway. Great, great. So there's a couple of questions coming through, and Mary and Cheryl, you might have some views on this or be able to provide some information. So what sort of damage was caused by Storm Barra to the network on the peninsula, and would putting any of the network underground protect it into the future?
Wind speeds experienced there, it would be extremely difficult to underground the network, the amount of network in Dingle, the rural terrain and everything. It wouldn't be a practical solution.
Very good, very good. And Cheryl, there was a question that came in. It might have been relating back to one of the graphs that you showed of the peninsula. So why do we have some 10 kV and some 20 kV network on the peninsula? Should it not all be the same, or can you explain a little bit about that? I think Cheryl might be.
Yeah, maybe I'll come in there. There's a plan this year that the network is being upgraded to 20 kV. And in 2022, the network around Slayhead, Ventry and Ballydavid will be converted to 20 kV. So it will all be going 20 kV, and that will be very helpful for the automation I described in my slide. It will enable more automation to be deployed.
Very good. And actually, Mary, this
for capacity as well.
Very good. Sorry, Alan, yeah?
Yeah, just thinking, depending on where that question is coming from, might be a good idea just to talk about medium and low voltage networks. So an analogy I often use is the electricity network. It's a lot like the road network. So a medium voltage road, that's a regional road. A low voltage road, that's the road in around your estate. That's the road in around your townland. So it's getting down to the local roads and the lanes. So Mary's talking there about upgrades to the medium voltage network, making the regional road a bit better. You still always need to have that mix of the regional roads and the local roads, or in our case, the medium voltage network and the low voltage network.
Okay, good. That helps kind of make it a little bit clearer to some people there. So thanks, Cheryl. So you were a little bit disconnected there for a few minutes. And actually, Mary, there was a follow-on question that we were talking about automation there. Somebody asked whether your automated scheme that you were explaining there, will that be rolled out nationwide?
That would be the hope long term on overhead networks. At the moment, I'd say we have about 20% deployment, and by the end of PR5 2025, we'll have another 20% covered. But it has to be done in conjunction with 20 kV conversion and other developments on the network as well, because we have to have all the standby capacity but certainly the plan in the future is to have much more automation than we have now.
Okay, very good, thanks. Ellen, a question had come in for you with regards to the National Networks Local Connections Programme? And will it be able to leverage learnings from the initiatives and pilots completed on the Dingle project? And if so, in what general areas?
I'd say in almost all of the areas. So yes, absolutely, it's leveraging the learnings. So I mean, some of the really straightforward, literally, the guys in Dingle have handed over their plans and their specs to us, relate to the sensors and the monitors. So that's one of the key learnings. So the specs fairly soon, we're going to be going to market for a larger scale rollout of those sensors. And it's not just that we've gotten specs from the guys down in Dingle, it's also from the work that was done down there. Procedures have been developed for the installation of these. We've gotten experience in, okay, what telecommunications are required with them. So the same way Deirdre was describing there, that with a local tradesperson, the experience of doing 30 homes in Dingle allowed them to see that, yeah, no, with this practice, we can scale up and now start providing services around Cork and Kerry. Well, for us, the experience of putting those sensors up on poles in Dingle allowed us to say, okay, here's the procedure, here's the practice, here's the technology that we need. So that's one of the really practical ones. Now, what we're finding more and more, I think what we're learning from Dingle and actually from a lot of the input that Deirdre and others have given us is about the human side of this. So I think when we started the National Network Local Connections Programme, we were really focused on the control systems, on control room technology and forecasting and monitoring and all these terms I get excited about as an electronic engineer. But what we're learning from the experience in Dingle is that you have to involve people and the community. It has to be made tangible and understandable, because ultimately this is about behavioural change. This is about what happens behind the meter, not what happens out in the network. So we've gotten some really good insights from the experience down in Dingle. I know that the team I wasn't able to go, but the rest of the team went down and met a number of the ambassadors and participants. And the next day we had a design workshop in the programme. And the ideas that were coming in were absolutely brilliant. And there were everything from technical ideas about communications gateways to how we need to send signals and make them much more visually accessible so that people can really engage with and take ownership of energy. So, whole breadth of things, but I'd say that it starts with the technology, but it goes on into the human side and what we've learned about involving people and taking control.
Great, Ellen. It's great to hear that there's so much that can be taken forward from the Dingle project. And I suppose, Deirdre, just a question then in relation to ESB Networks Dingle project. So it'll be wrapping up, as you know, in terms of our technical trials, will be finishing at the end of January next year. And will this have any impact on the Dingle Hub or the work that you're going to be doing?
I suppose the impact is that we have that, informed, engaged community. That's what's staying with us, and a number of the technologies. Quite a number of the technologies are here too. So we have that sandbox. We have that ability to participate in projects, in innovation projects, and looking at the transition to a low carbon society. And it almost is as simple that the chat among neighbours, can as easily be about kilowatt hours generated now as it is about litres of milk produced. So it's that level of informedness and eagerness to participate. I think that's going to be a lasting impact for the Dingle Hub as we, look to 2030 and we look to ensure that the community here transitions to a low carbon society.
Great, thanks, Deirdre. And I know you spoke earlier on about the diffusion of knowledge and learnings beyond the Dingle Peninsula and maybe even beyond Kerry. And I know Peter Bracken was kind of dropping a question in the chat there, hoping that you'd be able to talk to the dairy farmers in Offaly sometime. So it's great that the work that Dinny has been doing and leading the Dairy Farmers SEC, that others definitely want to hear more about that across the country. So that's fantastic. And Dinny has just put in a congrats to people there. It's been a pleasure working with everybody on the project. So thanks, Dinny. It's been great working with you as well on that. So just another question then, Deirdre, just in terms of your travel to COP, what were the biggest challenges in terms of charging as you progressed from Ireland through Northern Ireland and into Scotland?
Well, it was a tale of two journeys, really. The way over, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. The way back was pretty seamless. I suppose the key challenges were, one, it's just a little bit clunky still. So I couldn't download the Scottish app on my Irish phone. which meant I didn't have access to, start the chargers when I needed. I had to phone the helpline to do it. I didn't have access to searching for the national charging network, which was quite difficult when I missed my exit off the motorway outside Glasgow at 1 o'clock at night. And I had 80 kilometres left. I had it all planned. But very quickly, those kilometres get eaten up as you look for the next exit and the next charging point, and not having access to an app was difficult. So to make a long story short, we crawled into a charger with, I would say, half a kilometre, if even, left. And then you had the issue of not being able to start it because we couldn't download the app, and trying to get through to the helpline and all of that. So it was very challenging on the way over, and it's just a clunkiness still in the system. On the way back, we pulled into a petrol station. I won't name the brand here, but it's a commercial provider of fuel for vehicles, and there was 6 50 kilowatt chargers that were actually running at 50 kilowatt, which was brilliant because they don't all do that, especially the one at 1 o'clock in the morning was 11 kilowatt instead of 43. But they were all running, and 30 minutes charging got us from just before Glasgow to nearly down to Dublin. So, it's there, we know how to get there, but it's going to take a little bit of time for that further rollout. So I think the worst bit was going between countries and not able to get access to the information that I needed to, recover when I couldn't, when we missed that motorway exit.
Thanks, Deirdre. And I suppose that's probably as challenging a journey as you'll get. So anything else in the future?
So. I think it was extreme, and that's why we did it, to put it to the test and understand the challenges. I really love always to finish up with the fact that I love the electric vehicle, and for like 99% of my driving needs, it will get me from Cork to here and one charge and back. There's no issue. There was no issue with the storm this week. I knew the storm was coming. I was fully charged. I wasn't going anywhere anyway in those conditions. But I had a week's supply of charge if I needed it. So yeah, for most of my driving needs, brilliant. But I won't be taking it out of the country again for another couple of years.
Very good. And actually, that was one of the points that Kieran brought out in his presentation at the EB trial on Wednesday, about the fact that the majority of journeys are quite small in distance, and if you're using home charging, you shouldn't really have a problem at all. So rural communities can fully adopt EVs over time. So very, very good. Ellen, a question there for you now in terms of your overall programme. So it's an exciting project and a huge body of work. And ESB Networks is just one component or one participant in it. So how are you working with other stakeholders across the industry, and ultimately, who's in charge?
Ultimately, who's in charge? We are all in charge of this. But how are we working with them? So I mentioned that back at the end of September, the programme was launched. Now, firstly, even in the weeks coming up to that launch, we actually held workshops with stakeholders who registered to the programme, because anybody can register their interest in the programme by just sending an email to engagement@esbnetworks.ie. And by the time we were even coming up to the launch, there were the best part of 200 stakeholders coming from, some of them coming from existing utilities, quite a few of them coming from quite innovative emerging energy and technology companies who are operating in Ireland. There were people from the SCAI, from a number of different organisations. So we held workshops where we went through our proposals in a preliminary sense and got a steer on, okay, need more ambition there, a bit less of that, and okay, well, how would you actually do this? So then when we launched the programme, we launched a public consultation. Over the period of it, there were a series of workshops. Each workshop was deep diving on one of the specific topics, because there's a lot of ground to cover. It's very exciting, but we've got some workshops where we're looking really just at market design, other ones where it's all about the signalling technology out to a smart inverter or a smart charger. So we held those workshops. We had a huge number of participants. They gave us a lot of very clear steers. Again, now they had the documents in their hands saying, okay, this standard is very, very good, but what you're going to need to do is join the dots, work with the SCAI, make sure it's being reflected in what they're putting into grant standards. Now the consultation period has closed, and so there were about 30 responses in writing. In those who've gone through them, there were the best part of 400 individual insights where someone responded and picked out a specific topic. But I'd say one of the biggest areas of focus was on how are we going to collaborate over the next number of years. So we've taken that into the program, and so I said we're all in charge, we're all leading this. Well, in ESB Networks, we're leading how we go out and engage with stakeholders. So what we want to do is take the time to just read through and consider, talk to some of those stakeholders and see what's the best possible vehicle for engagement going forward. What I can say is there's going to be a lot of it. So we've launched now, and that's great. That's one communications, one engagement and collaboration exercise. But we need to involve stakeholders in the design of piloting, in the delivery of the piloting, in eking out, okay, what learnings can we take from these? So for example, if we're doing a pilot where we want to put a dashboard in front of the community and find out from the community, how best do we present the information? What presentation most nudges people to actually take control and respond? But we don't want to do that in isolation. We want to do that with industry, so competitive industry, energy suppliers and aggregators feeding in the questions saying, okay, could you trial this? And then they can apply that learning. We're hoping to work in future with aggregators, so new energy companies who work with customers in their homes and businesses, put the technology in place and support those homes and businesses in finding out how they can manage their energy. So what we want to do is work with them where we've identified some services that we want on the network, so some kinds of behaviours we want from customers and businesses. We want to work with the aggregators now to see how can they develop a viable proposition for customers to deliver those parameters we're saying are needed on the network, but they'll know better how to work with customers to elicit response, to provide the right supports and the right incentives. So we want this to be really a living and breathing discovery-led pilot program. We want industry feeding into the questions and gaining the learnings, but I suppose shortly in the new year, I think we'll be coming out with an updated framework for that. So watch the National Network Local Connections website or that space and we want this, we need this to be collaborative. So if there are folks on the line who want to get involved, whose organisation wants to get involved, please register your interest at engagement@esbnetworks.ie.
Very good. Thanks, Ellen. So you heard her. If you're interested, register your interest with the website there. So just that we've about time for two more questions before we close up and hand over to Nicholas, who's going to deliver final closing remarks. So just first of all, Ellen and Mary and Cheryl and everybody, congratulations to everybody with regards to the response to Storm Barra. Those wind speeds are regular on the peninsula. But a question that came out was, did the batteries in the retrofitted homes still have sufficient power to power the homes? And I the little bit I know on this is that unless grid forming inverters or changeover switches have been installed at those different properties, essentially the properties can't stand alone and not be essentially connected to the network. So Mary, Cheryl, Ellen, do you want to just pass a comment on that as well?
Okay, well, what I was going to say, Fergal, is yes. So it'll take time, but yes. So in the last fortnight, we started sitting down and saying, what are the various things that would need to change in terms of those switches and the protection settings on them, and in terms of our own procedures for, okay, well, if we're working on those networks, how do we make sure that it's still safely isolated while we fix the network and someone stays running on battery? We do know that back in, so I think it was last year now, maybe early this year, when in Texas there were those major snowstorms, there were actually homes running on car batteries at that time. We want to get to that place. It will take time. So it's not going to be a this year and next year thing in the program, but that is actually one of the use cases that we're looking at out into the longer term. So yes, Virgo, yes is the operative word here.
Okay, very good, very good. Thanks, Ellen. So listen, a final question then to close off the Q&A. So Deirdre, if you were to look 5 to 10 years into the future on the Dingle Peninsula, how are things going to look quite different on the ground? Can you tell us about what your vision would be?
Wow. Well, we would definitely have our transport sorted. We have that, I said, one simple objective out of that we are down to one-car households. You know, that we have developed the public transport solutions that are appropriate for the area, that we have enabled the walking and cycling that we need. and that we're using electric vehicles, where it makes sense. And in parallel to that, we have developed farm to fork here on the peninsula, and that's enabled by anaerobic digestion, that we really have, quality produce here, that we have sustainable farm incomes here, that we have the pathway development for local energy use in the local transport markets. That's leading to food energy and food security on both sides. So that is the overall, the big vision. I suppose it feeds into the Dingle Peninsula 2030 initiative, looking at all things from the agriculture sector, transport, energy, the marine and tourism, and bringing all that together in a holistic, low carbon way.
Very good. Thanks very much, Deirdre, for that. And I suppose I'm just conscious of time now, so I think we'll wrap up today's Q&As, but hopefully everybody who is listening into the webinar today got something useful from it. So we were given a good overview, first of all, of some of the works carried out to upgrade traditional technologies on the network, as well as an insight into new technologies being trialled, which collectively will enable a more reliable electricity network for all our customers into the future. We then heard about the National Networks Local Connection Programme and the greater role that citizens and communities will be able to play in the future. And certainly there's going to be really interesting times ahead. And then we heard about all the great plans and new initiatives that are already kicking off across the Dingle Peninsula, which are being spearheaded by the Dingle Hub. And they'll all contribute to a much greater level of carbon reduction right across that community. And those learnings will be diffused beyond Dingle, beyond Kerry, and nationwide. So there's lots of great things happening and kickstarting a lot of work nationwide across the country. So I'd really like to thank all of our presenters today. To Cheryl and Mary, I know you're under a lot of pressure at the moment with the storm response to Storm Barra. To Ellen and Deirdre for giving your thoughts and your insights into the future and how things will change over the coming years. I'm delighted now to introduce Nicholas Tarrant, Managing Director of ESB Networks, to say a few final words and to close down the Dingle Project webinar series. So Nicholas was appointed Managing Director of ESB Networks in September of this year. And prior to this, he held the positions of Executive Director, Engineering and Major Projects, and Managing Director, Northern Ireland Electricity Networks. He has held a number of senior management positions, including Generation Manager with responsibility for ESB's generation portfolio. He's a Chartered Engineer at the Institute of Engineers of Ireland, a Chartered Director, and holds an MSc in Management from Trinity College Dublin. So over to you now, Nicholas, for your closing comments.
Thanks very much, Virgil, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for the introduction. It's great to be able to join you today just as we close out this series. It's been a fantastic series all week, and it's really kind of bringing, I think, to life the whole Dingle project, which has been such an important project, not only for the community in Dingle, but for us in ESB Networks and all the partners who've been involved. It's a tremendous project, and it's great to be able to showcase it through this webinar series this week. So there's maybe a few things I might kind of mention, but in reality, I think the Q&A session has highlighted some really key insights that I think are brilliant to hear, and I might just kind of reinforce a couple of them. But before I get into talking about the series or the project overall, just look, Storm Barra has come up in this session, and obviously enough, given the week that was in it. So really, really busy week for everybody in ESB Networks. It's been incredibly busy, particularly down around the southwest, but the west coast in general. So I think the Kerry West Cork region has been particularly badly hit. And it just, I suppose, with the theme today on today's webinar about resilience of the network, it just reinforces as we think about decarbonisation and the role of electrification as part of that resilience of the network is so important. So I know as part of maybe today's session and maybe others as well, that the issue of investment in the network through our price review, this current price review PR5 over the next 5 years and out to 2030, that continued investment in the network is just so important. So a busy week, and maybe coming back to the webinar series, Fergal mentioned a number of the topics that have come up, everything from the EV trial, flexibility, the whole importance of the ambassador program. And I think, you know, as I look at this program overall, or the project overall, I think the ambassador program and the engagement with the community has been probably the single biggest factor in the success of the project. That interplay between technology, society, and the whole external kind of partnerships. It's a wide ecosystem that make these projects a success. And I think that for me, when I look at it, that is such a key thing. So it was great to hear Deirdre talking there about the legacy beyond the project. And if you look beyond the trials coming to an end early in the new year and showcasing the project overall through events like this, I think that legacy is really important, again, for the local community, but also for communities as we look at decarbonisation across the country. For us, Ellen has talked about the National Network Local Connections programme, and I think taking the lessons from the Dingle project and bringing them into that overall programme as we're looking to change the use of the electricity network, particularly the distribution network, I think that is going to be one of the really important legacies from this project. And I think it's a fantastic set of insights that we've got from this that will go into that overall programme. So I think that the project overall, and there's no doubt about it, it's a visionary project when it was started. And I think as we're kind of getting to the stage now where the trials are coming to an end, I think the impact of the project will go far beyond this phase. It's obviously having an impact beyond these shores as well, as Deirdre outlined with our trip to Glasgow. And I think it's fantastic that we have such an amazing program that can be showcased anywhere. So I think as we bring today's webinar to a close, I think it's brilliant to be able to reflect on that, and also as some of those questions where they're very forward-looking as we think about the network for the future. So maybe with that, I'll again just to echo Fergal's comments and just to thank all the speakers from today and also right through the week, and for everybody who's logged on and who's taken part and is taking part. I just wanted to say thank you for your time on behalf of everybody in ESB Networks. Obviously, the ESB Networks team that have been involved in helping put these webinars on, Fergal, Claire, and others as well. Just to say, look, thanks very much for that, and for everybody who's been a participant. Just thanks again for your time. So look, we'll be no doubt talking many times in the future about this project as we look to the future in 2030. So really looking forward to keeping the engagement up. And maybe with that, just to say thanks again, and wish everybody a happy Christmas and a safe Christmas. And thank you very much.